To win our independence, first Boston must be free. Enter Knox, Henry. On the first sleigh of his train, the oxen pulled for thee a ton of artillery. On the second sleigh of his train, the oxen pulled for thee 2 brothers Knox and a ton of artillery. On the third sleigh of his train, the oxen pulled for thee 3 bronze guns, 2 brothers Knox, and a ton of artillery.
Alright guys, wrap it up. Knox got to Boston faster than this.
On the 12th sleigh of his train, the oxen pulled for thee 12-inch iron mortars, $11 payment, 10 oarsmen rowing, 9-pound iron cannon, 8 bronze mortars, 7 18-pounders, 6 royal cohorts, 5 tons of shells
from New York City.
4th Regiment, 3 bronze guns, 2 brothers Knox, and a ton of artillery.
Hello, I'm Dr. Matthew Cagle, curator here at Fort Ticonderoga, and this is the point where we head off the stream of comments we will inevitably get by laying down some cold, hard historical facts on this little bit of historically inspired holiday cheer.
A ton of artillery.
Alright, just to set the record straight, obviously Henry Knox moved more than a ton of artillery. In fact, he moved something in the order of 59.5 tons of ordnance alone, another ton pushing it over 60 if we add in the lead and the flints that he also took from Ticonderoga.
2 brothers Knox.
Henry Knox didn't bring any men with him per se on the expedition, but he did bring his brother William, who aided him throughout the course of the noble train's transport and arrival outside of Boston.
3 bronze guns.
Of course, Henry Knox took more than 3 bronze guns. The bronze, or brass as they were described in the period canon, were among the prizes of his expedition. But he did in fact move specifically 3 brass or bronze 6-pounders that had been captured with the fall of Fort Saint-Jean in Canada just recently.
4th Regiment.
Research into their records has indicated that the bulk of the men who assisted Henry Knox's expedition were in fact from Colonel Holmes's 4th New York Regiment. Some from the 1st New York as well, but they provided the bulk of the assistance here at Ticonderoga, moving the cannon and other stores on the first leg of their journey towards Boston.
5 tons of shells!
Alright, Henry Knox, of course, did not take 5 tons of shells from Ticonderoga. However, he did request 5 tons of shells from stores in New York City for the mortars that he had secured here at Ticonderoga. In fact, he also requested 5 tons of 24-pound and 18-pound shot for cannons. And if you want to know more about shot, you can check out our videos.
6 royal cohorts.
Now, these mortars were not explicitly described in his later tally to General Washington, but in Henry Knox's diary, he does describe the contents of the petty auger making its way to Lake George as containing 6 royal cohorns.
7 18-pounders.
Alright, here we have to get a little bit specific. In fact, Henry Knox did transport 7 double-fortified 18-pounders, made of iron, in addition to a number of other iron 18-pounders and 1 bronze 18-pounder, among the biggest cannon in the expedition.
8 bronze mortars.
8 bronze mortars. In fact, Henry Knox did transport 8 bronze mortars of various sizes.
9-pound iron cannon.
4 iron 9-pounders were actually the second smallest caliber of iron cannon that Henry Knox selected for the expedition, the only smaller iron guns being 6-pounders.
10 oarsmen rowing.
All right, this is probably a bit of an exaggeration. I'm sure there were more than 10 oarsmen that propelled the scow, the petty-auger, and the bateau that moved artillery from Ticonderoga all the way up Lake George to the southern end at Fort George on the first leg of Henry Knox's expedition.
$11 payment.
Knox's diary does in fact record the payment of $11 to 43 soldiers under the command of Captain John Johnson of the 1st New York Regiment, who participated in aiding Knox in moving artillery from Ticonderoga to the landing and then ultimately to Fort George on the first leg of the expedition. Although no doubt this money was distributed in a more dignified fashion.
12-inch iron mortars.
Okay, 12-inch iron mortars. Now, Knox did record moving 3 13-inch iron mortars, but we know that in fact 2 of those were what were technically French 12 pouce mortars, the pouce being the French inch. So I think it's legitimate in this case to describe them as 12-inch iron mortars, and sometimes they were on returns. These were really the prizes of the entire expedition, the largest shell-firing weapons, and if you want to learn more about the fragment of one of these mortars that made the trip with Knox, we've got another video on that. Well, thank you for joining us and taking this little trip into the pedantry and minutiae of Henry Knox's expedition. And as we enter that time of year where we're thinking about Henry Knox and the noble train, let us remember the reason for the season: the procurement of heavy artillery and field pieces for the fledgling Continental Army. Thank you for joining us.